Or I can cut shit. It's fine. You put this in the end as the blue first. Okay. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Busy Life Podcast. My name is Julie. I am a personal trainer, special education teacher, women's health and fitness coach, and nutrition coach. And I just want to say thank you for being here. Every single time I sit down to do a podcast episode, I am genuinely so grateful. And I appreciate every single one of you who has either written to me or listened, or even if you just have given my podcast some kind of love, thank you. It really, really, really means a lot to me. So I wanted to make sure I started with that. On another note, I wanted to share with you guys, because I try to be as transparent as possible. I wanted to share with you guys some things that have been going on in my life, and I think the best thing to do when you've got a lot going on is to talk about it. I mean, I'm a huge believer in talk therapy and any kind of therapy that works for you. But for me, it really helps to get things off my chest by talking about it. And I figure the best way to do that is to come on here, because I know that there's more than one person who has gone through things that I am going through, or somebody who is going to go through the things that I've gone through, or you're maybe currently going through it as well. So today we are going to talk all about triggers, your own triggers, other people's triggers. And you might be thinking, why do I give a crap about other people's triggers? But it's not that you have to. It's just, how are you going to respond when other people are getting triggered by you? And I'm going to go into more detail about that. And then what to do with your own triggers too. What do you do when you get triggered? And what does it even mean to be triggered? So before we do that, I want to introduce you guys to somebody very special to me. My cousin Irene is here today, and I've been waiting for Irene to come on my podcast. And I'm going to let her introduce herself, but I just want you guys to know she's obviously way more than just my cousin. She means so much to me, but I will let her introduce herself too.
Oh my God, I'm going to cry.
Don't do
that. Hi. I'm Irene. Gosh, I'm a jack of all trades. I have a very odd credential list.
You can list it all. It's fine.
No, I'm a registered dietitian. I'm an certified intuitive eating counselor. And I'm also a real estate agent and a mom and Greek like Julie.
Yes.
So we have big families, and that's all. You know that story.
But that's important, because with big families sometimes come big opinions, and sometimes it comes different opinions and different people having different expectations for you. Mm-hmm. And at the end of the day, even though everybody loves you, whether it's your family, whether it's your friends, whether it's your coworkers, you still have to take care of yourself. And you have to make sure that you are doing what is best for you.
Absolutely.
Which is kind of like the blanket statement to our topic of triggers. And I want to start off first, of course, by what is a trigger? I think the word trigger has come up more recently, just within the past 5 years, I would say. A lot of people are like, oh, I'm getting triggered. This is triggering me. That's such a trigger. And I even use that word more frequently in therapy now than I did back in the day, because I think now we're finally, or at least it feels like, in a place where we are identifying the people that are the problem, or the things that are the problem. And in order for us to say, hey, this is not working for me, maybe it's not a problem, it's just not working for me, the word we use is trigger.
Yeah, I think, and we're also more educated and more aware of everything. And, you see stuff constantly on social media, even about this kind of thing, and from therapists and from, people trying to help everybody, blanket statement to figure their shit out.
Exactly. Also, feel free to curse. This is a cursing podcast. Yeah, I mean, I even found an article that said trigger warnings have changed the diversity, equity, and inclusion landscape overall. So basically, when people brought up difficult topics in the past, they were just too uncomfortable to bring them up, or they would just say, I feel uncomfortable. Whereas now we can identify those things first and be like, nope, that's a trigger or a trigger warning. I'm not even going to get involved because I know that's going to make me triggered or pissed or
I have a good response to that.
Go for it.
I think so. I view triggers as like sort of like a gauge on your emotional maturity. So seeing so I think, and my perspective of that article was a little bit like people, like we should dig into our triggers. Right? Like we should dig into them. If you're triggered by something, like there's a reason you're triggered by it, right? Yes. And so when you spoke in the beginning about, we didn't even get to your story yet.
No, we'll get there. No worries, we'll get there.
But when you spoke in the beginning about like when other people are triggered by you, whose responsibility is that and whatever. But also like on the other side of that coin, when we are triggered, it's not something to run away from. It's something to be like, oh, why is that triggering me? Like, I need to look into that, because that's basically like, it's a roadmap to uncovering things that bother you for maybe a reason you don't know bother you. So my perspective of that article was more like trigger warnings gave people an out to like feel the hard feelings versus like, and there's obviously caveats to this. I mean, no, we are so aware of way too many things. Like social media has made it like we know too much about what's going on.
Absolutely.
And that all affects people's stress levels and confusion about who to listen to and what's true and what's not and what's actually going on. And, like, I'm not saying that that's a good thing, but the way I kind of perceived that article was more that I just feel like we shouldn't be scared.
Yes.
Or run away from something when it triggers us.
I completely agree with that, though. And I think it depends. Oh my gosh, I'm losing my voice. It depends on the trigger too, because certain things that do trigger you, it should almost be like the red flag to you that like you've been here, you've done this, and this doesn't work for you. Or it should be like what Irene said, where it's like, but why is this bothering you? Like, what about this pisses you off? And one of the stories that I was going to tell, I've got many, but the one that I was really thinking about, and I kind of want to pick your brain on this one, is I obviously post all about health and fitness on Facebook, on Instagram, everywhere, because that's, besides teaching, like one of my biggest passions. I want to help everybody feel the best they can, but specifically women, because I grew up being told all the things like, no, let the men do it. Oh, the guys can do this. And I heard it so many times, to the point where I started even hearing things where it was like, no, you just need to be thin. You just need to look good. You just need to do this. You just need to do that. And I was really tired of people just telling me, you just need to blank. And I was like, I want to write my own story. I want to start going to the gym, which then led to people judging me for going to the gym. Oh, but you're not supposed to get the biceps. You don't need to look that way. Are you trying to get bulky? Like, all the questions came from people that I cared about. And it was like, why do you care? So fast forward to now, when I still post all these things and people either comment in person or online, and they're like, oh gosh, like you don't need to be lifting that many weights. Or, oh, Julie, you're going to do this. Or, Julie, you're going to hurt your back. Julie, are you trying to look manly? And I realized it was triggering me. But I didn't know which way I should have responded. Like, should I respond in the way that's like, Julie, you know better than that. You've been fighting this for so long. Do we just continue to ignore it because their behavior doesn't need to affect you? Or do we need to keep thinking about why this is triggering us?
Yeah. I think there's a few things that you can do. And one, like whenever something that helped me, that I learned from talk therapy too, was like, I would have so much anxiety around like family events. Do you know what I mean? Where I knew there was going to be a lot of people there.
Yeah.
So I would get like, I would literally, and you know what they say about like anxiety and worry, it's literally just forcing yourself to like go through the trauma twice.
Yeah.
So my therapist was like, okay, well, what can we do to like help you instead of you just like stewing over this for the next 5 days and then like the event's going to come and then we don't know what's going to happen and whatever. So it was like, what can you, like, if this were to happen, if like worst case scenario were to happen and someone was to make a comment about the thing that you're worried about, your body or how you look or whatever, how would you, like, can you come up with something that you would respond to them with that would, because usually, you know, my response in situations like that, and I think a lot of people is the same, where you're kind of like a deer in headlights and you're like, holy shit, I can't believe you just said that to my face. Like, oh, I don't even know how to respond. You know, like sometimes it's like that. Sometimes it's more subtle, but sometimes, and no matter what, it's like, it's an attack on your person. Mm-hmm. Because they're insulting things that you're choosing to do. So there's so many different levels of this, but I feel like one thing that would be helpful is like, what can a response be from you as like a calm individual, not triggered prior to any of these events happening, where you could have kind of a slapback that's not a slapback, that's just kind of like, it's, you know, I love it. It's because I love your story about how you started working out, because I don't remember, you know, my memory of when you started working out was more related to your anxiety. Mm-hmm. And how your anxiety was getting much worse, and Theolula passed away, and suddenly like there was so many things that happened all at once, and your anxiety was like getting worse and worse.
Yes, quick. It was.
And then whether the doctor that suggested you start working out, I don't know. I feel like I remember they told you to do it to help your anxiety. Was it your therapist?
No, it was my doctor, actually, because you're right. I've never really talked about that on here, that like my grandmother had passed away, and she was like my second mother, and it was like losing a whole part of you, you know, like,
and it was very sudden.
So sudden. Yeah. Like it literally happened on New Year's Eve, which is also, New Year's Eve is a major trigger to me because it constantly makes me think about that day. But then I guess I wouldn't know if I would call that a trigger or just trauma, but still.
Yeah, I think that's just memory.
It's both. Yeah. And after all of that, I went to the doctor, and the doctor had told me, she was like, I really would recommend just walking every day, which is what I talk about on here all the time. She was like, just do something that makes you feel good. And at the time I was a dancer because I was in college, and I was like, you know, like the assistant president of my team and everything. And I was like, no, I dance. And she was like, no, like, I mean, maybe you should like lift weights.
Yeah.
Like maybe you should go in the gym and pick up something heavy and put it down and feel that feeling. And I thought in that moment, oh no, I don't go to the gym.
Yeah.
And she was like, no, but you do. Like,
or you can.
You can
just be that person from now on.
You can. Like, you can go to the gym. What are you talking about?
Yeah.
And I was like, no, I just don't. So like when I had started, I was classic beginner, like going on the elliptical for 20 minutes and being like, woo, that was a hard workout, guys. Not that that's easy, but like at the time, like compared
that's
to
the
like,
first thing you did. Like that was the first time you went to the gym. And it was, but think about that. Like it was not, like, think about the reason that most people, we're getting so off topic.
It's good. These are still not triggers.
The reason that most people start going to the gym and working out. Like, it's very rooted in diet culture. It's very rooted in trying to change their body. And usually it's out of punishment, and it's not out of pleasure or confidence or anxiety or mental health. Like, it's very much typically rooted in diet culture, especially then. I mean, we're not talking about 3 years ago. It was a little while ago.
No, like, this was like 10 years ago.
Yeah, it was a while ago. So I think, you know, that's important because your relationship with exercise is totally different from mine. Do you know what I mean? Like with how you started and what it helps you with, because, and I think that just the literal, like, basic topic of this, other people being triggered by you working out, going to the gym, being interested in your health and fitness, like, you know, you literally did not start this for the reasons that they probably associate with it. right? So like they might get triggered because you're doing it, and you're doing it seemingly, I know that it's not easy, but more effortlessly than they ever were able to. And so it's hard for other people to see that and like not be able to do that the same. But I really feel like our relationship with exercise, our relationship with food, it's all of our experiences are different, and
Absolutely.
it's very dependent on whether we can keep going and what thoughts are happening in our mind when we're working out, when we're going to the gym, when we're eating certain things or not eating certain things or whatever. So I think trigger wise, hands down, like I don't even have to ask. I don't even have to know who you're talking about. I can assume, but you know what I mean? Like it's more so most likely if somebody's triggered by your health and fitness routine and ability to maintain it and be consistent and whatever, it's most likely basically just because they haven't been able to do the same. So that's it.
Can we just have like a whole mic drop for that whole thing? Because you just like hit that on the nail. That is so true. And that is what leads me to my second thing that I wanted to talk about with triggers is even though we all have them, you are not responsible for somebody else's trigger, which is what I was telling myself in that moment. Because yes, it made me mad that they were mad about my choices, but I had to like sit back for a minute and be like, but does this choice make me mad? Because it's my choice and this is the life I am choosing to live. And I honestly just don't give a fuck if it bothers somebody else because this is my life. Like I live in this body. I'm the one going to the gym or doing the meal prepping or even teaching. Like, you know how many times people tell me, oh, I don't envy you because you teach. Like, oh, that sucks. Okay, I didn't ask. But I choose this life and I am proud of this life. So I think the best thing I would recommend is just to do that and remind yourself too, like what Irene said, essentially their trigger, the fact that they are triggered by you is not your problem. And you have to remind yourself that, like, as long as you're proud of the things that you're doing, fuck the rest.
Yeah. I think too, like, there's a difference between getting annoyed or frustrated with people because it's not like a one-time thing. Like people are going to say things, people have said things, so it's not like the first time someone ever said this, you were like, what the fuck? Why are you even saying that? You might've been like, that's weird. Why would you be annoyed at that?
Yeah,
and then
rude.
So now the 50th time you're like, why are you annoyed with that? Like, just leave me alone. But it's very like, I don't know. I feel like that it goes back to the emotional maturity thing, right?
Yes.
And the emotional awareness, because you can even just being able to cognitively be like, okay, obviously my lifestyle is triggering for them. Yes, it's annoying. Yes, I don't prefer not to hear about it, but like it also does speak to their emotional, like
immaturity.
Yes. Yeah. Their level of emotional maturity. And a lot of people, like, especially in the generation above us, like there's, therapy was so stigmatized. It still is.
Oh, absolutely.
So it's like, that's something that we, as this generation, we're like, bringing everything out into the light that was swept under the rug for the last hundreds of years, and so it's hard, like anybody going through this or having ever been to therapy or trying to discover where everything comes from within you, like it's a hard process because a lot of times you find stuff that is not ideal. I mean, it's like you crack yourself wide open in order to rebuild, and so it's not an easy process. Just giving, going through it is brave by itself, but I do think that anyone who hasn't been through it, they're constantly getting triggered because literally everything they see is like they're judging themselves on whatever they're not doing compared to what everybody else is doing, So it's just like it's interesting because I feel I like pity people almost that are like that because it sucks. I mean, that sucks to live like that. You're like, And that's where the people are that are just like mad all the time and being, you know, like not having a good time. They're just like,
they're very judgmental.
Yeah, super judgmental. And like, what kind of life is that to live, you know?
No.
It doesn't feel good to be like that. It feels good to like try to look at everybody's perspective or try to be like, you know, even trying to dig into your triggers. If you're not ready to dig into it, and that's what a little you were talking about before, like if something triggers you and you're like, okay, I'm super triggered. I don't want to deal with it. Like, I'm not ready to deal with this yet. That's fine. If that's where you're at, you know, but like there might come a time in a month or in 6 months or whatever, where you've done more work and, you know, whatever, that you might get that trigger again and be ready to dig into it at that point. You know, like it's not a perfect science, but it is literally just like the roadmap to figuring your shit out.
And I think it's funny that you say it that way too, because I remember one time in therapy, I was talking about somebody in particular that was always annoying me. And I remember she was like, my therapist was like, well, why? Like, what about her bothers you? And I was like, I don't know. She's just annoying. And she was like, I think you do. Like, you do. You need to sit down. You need to ask yourself, you know, if you could, in a hypothetical world, what would you change about her to be less annoying? I was like, oh, I just wish she was more independent. And she was like, boom, there it is. So people who are, you know, X, Y, and Z, quote, annoyed me or triggered me. And instead of avoiding it, I had to, like you said, crack that open and be like, oh, well, it's because of this. Which then led to a conversation of, well, what about that, like, is appealing to you? Why would it make you happier if this or if that? And it literally was like an onion that just kept getting
unlayered.
Because
I'm sure that the bottom layer was like, you secretly wanted to be more independent.
Yeah, something like it was something like that.
No, you don't have to. I know what it was.
It probably was. It was something. It was something along the lines
that's
of
usually
like
what it is.
Yes.
Like really, like if you see something that's. You know, like, because that's your subconscious being like, we want that, but instead you're like, it goes through the filter of our brain, and we're like, oh, it's so annoying. But really,
why
you're like, God, I wish I could be like that. You know,
which is what brings me back to the Facebook thing, and it's like, it makes you feel cocky almost in a way when you're like, oh, well, they're triggered because they want to be like me, but it's not necessarily a thing to think that you're being cocky about. I think it's something you should be proud about, that you have committed to this thing and that you have actually tried. And it brings me back to what I was saying about how you should be proud of those things. And when you see that somebody's pissed off about something, as long as you are proud of it and you commit to it and you stand behind it, you're like, I don't give a fuck.
Yeah. But again, it's the emotional maturity of it, because there's also plenty of people who are inspired by watching you and learning the ways that you do things. And you know what I mean? Like, and it shows, like, there's levels of where people are at, and the bottom level that of like, it's obvious that you've never done any work on yourself. Like, those are the people that are going to be writing all the mean trolling comments on the internet, you know, like they're instead of spending their time trying to go to therapy and like learning about this, they're
Unpack their own onion.
People on social media because it's easy and nobody knows who they are, and you know what I mean? Like, it's sad.
I saw a comment on somebody I follow posted a video of her and her daughter cooking or doing something in the kitchen, and somebody commented on it. It was like, am I the only one that finds her daughter annoying?
Oh my God. About a kid. Like,
about a kid. First of all, and it was funny because this person's profile was private.
Yeah.
And their profile picture wasn't even of them. It was of like a flower.
Yeah.
So
it's like a troll account.
The perfect place to hide and just go online and bitch about people and bitch at people. But honestly, if that's what you're doing, what kind of time do you have with your day?
But that's just such a sad life. You know, like,
so sad.
I don't pity people. I do hope that, you know, whenever I post on social media, whenever I do anything outwardly, that even just read it, like, I want to be a possible, like, light shining that can just make them be like, maybe I do that. Maybe, you know, like, maybe I should think about this in a different perspective. Maybe I am wrong, you know, like, whatever it is, like, whatever that little thing is, because again, like the light has, you just, when 5 years ago, when all this, what year is it? 6 years ago. It's been 6 years since like the Today Show, and like, it's been 6 years since all that happened. So it's just like when I first started personal development and like learning about this, and fast forward to COVID, therapy, medication, whatever, like all the whole last 6 years. I mean, it literally took a teeny thing to like literally completely change, like be able to see, like we were just talking about downstairs, like be able to see clearly what was going on in the past that I was like stewing over, and why I was in such a bad place because of where my mindset was about all things, like the feelings that I was having predominantly of like jealousy, and like, why can they look like that? Why is this so easy for them? And like, I struggle so bad, like constant comparison, constant like negativity, and like, woe is me and I'm the victim, like constant. And when that's the voice in your head for 25 years, 35, well, whatever, we can give my 10-year-old self, maybe it started in like high school, I don't know, but like 20 years, like, like it's hard to kick that. But all it takes is like one little thing to make you like question, and you like just start picking at this, like you're picking at the scab a little, and then it's like, then you start to get more into it, and then you start, and especially, social media can be really good because you can learn a lot from it if you follow the right people and you're not putting yourself into like a mental health frenzy. Like you have to be very careful about who you follow, but holistic psychologist for one, like I'm obsessed.
Done.
I'm obsessed. I like everything she writes. I'm like, oh my God, this is me. This is happening to me, or it's happened, or, and now I'm at a place where I've been following her for like 5 years. Aww. And I'm like, oh, I got through that. Like I see her talking about the like first starting stages, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I remember when she first posted about this, and I read it and I was like, oh my God, I didn't even know what codependency was, and I was like, maybe I need therapy.
Oh, but see,
but that's what it is. Like even like, because I don't like to have the mindset of like, fuck the trolls. Like I want to help that. Like I'm that. That's my toxic trait. I'm like, I can change you. I can make you go to therapy.
Mine is like, listen, I will try. I will make a podcast. I will have an Instagram that I hope to everybody feels like a safe space where I come on and I just literally go on and on about all my anxiety and all my bloating and all my things. And then if I actually find something that's working, I'm like, guys, use this. How to help yourself. But then like, if you don't want it, that's your choice. So then it's true. Fall into the fuck the haters mindset, because then I'm like, I did my best.
Yeah. But it's also, I mean, this can also easily wrap into like boundaries.
Oh, totally.
Too, which is like another foreign language,
Oh God.
That's a very hard one.
Well, what we got to go back to is what you were saying, because you introduced it of like 6 years ago and where you started, and you can give a summary of it, but just like, what was your mindset then, and what were your triggers then, and how have you grown and changed since then?
I mean, I was very triggered right before all of that went down, and I've told you this story before, and now I'm like, who listens to this podcast? I'm just kidding. I don't care. No, it's fine.
Honestly,
don't cut it. No, this is a good story. But this is one of those situations where I was immensely triggered and a super deer in headlights, and like I can't believe you just said that to my face. Like we were at a family party, and someone I hadn't seen since I was in high school saw me and didn't recognize me, and when I told her who I was, she immediately, I literally am holding a 6-month-old on my hip. I have a 2-year-old around my leg, and my 5-year-old is like chasing his cousin around the thing. And she said, "You really let yourself go,
bitch."
And I was like, like, I don't even know what I did.
In a fucking headlight. Because who says that?
Okay. But, like, to be blatantly honest, at the time, that was my internal dialogue. I was like telling myself every day, like, how much I let myself go. Do you know what I mean? Like, so she literally just brought to light my deepest, darkest, like, fear and insecurity. When in reality, looking back and after doing all the work I've done, I did not let myself go. I had 3 kids. I was depressed and needed medication and was scared of what that meant, knew nothing about mental health, knew nothing about, like, literally, I knew nothing.
And that's fine.
And so, it's hindsight is 2020, but at the time, my mindset was that I let myself go. Like this, she's literally just like, and I know that it's rude that she said that to me. And it's rude that she said, like, how you should not say things like that in general. Like, you're an asshole just for saying that. But it made me super upset, not only because it was embarrassing and like, that's just a terrible situation, but because it was simultaneously something that I thought about myself. And so, yeah, that was the beginning. And that I had like tried every diet under the sun. I dieted since I was in high school, and I had a very negative self dialogue. And I saw something on Instagram about being on the Today Show to do 80 Day Obsession. And I was like, drinking wine on the couch, probably 3 glasses deep. You're like, nobody ever gets this. Nobody ever wins this shit. I'm just going to like fill it out. And I'm going to fill it out. And if I don't get chosen, like, I give up. I'm not trying anymore. So fast forward to this party happened, that happened. I was in like a deep depression of like crying and for like 3 days. And then the next day, like, found out I was chosen for the show.
Woo!
So it was a very interesting and emotional week.
And I remember when you got chosen, I don't think you told anybody at first, because you were like you told like your mom and Joanna and everybody, but then it was like it wasn't a public thing until you had shared it. But I think you had told me because I was your babysitter at the time.
And you were coming to my house,
yeah, every day.
Yeah, and Beachbody sent me the weights. And yes. We were like, oh my God, they sent me a whole set of weights.
And we were like, oh my God, what is
it? No, but it's not. See, our history with working out is so different. Like, I was a personal trainer when I was 24. Like, I was not a newbie to that world. I just had kids, and I went through this huge life transition.
But you and so many other people.
Yes.
Because so many people have either used to work out in their lifetime, or they have always wanted to, or been there, done that, and now I have kids. Like, or the amount of people who have said that is way more than we could ever count.
Yeah, it's true. Or it's always been wrapped into a diet.
Yes.
Like the dieting and the working out have always been intertwined. And so separating them is extremely difficult. Mm-hmm. And then it gets more complicated. I was an athlete growing up. So like, then it's more complicated because like, I like working out. I liked working out. Yeah. I liked playing sports. And then, sometime, when things change and you stop playing sports, you go to college, like we were doing some intramural stuff. We were doing some like adult leagues, and then it dwindles. Then you have kids and you literally don't do shit like that. Like you can't leave the house at 9 p.m. to go play a soccer game indoor, with your husband because somebody's got to be home with the baby. And yeah, it was like pretty much 5 straight years of either being pregnant or breastfeeding. Like I was like stuck, and it's like, it's a long time. And then it's a huge transition after to just like figure it all out again. And because you try to kind of go back to what you knew before, but there is no such thing as that. Everything is different. So
I love that you said that you try to go back to what you had before, but there is no such thing as that, because that is so true. And I think that in itself is a massive trigger that leads to a deep wound for a lot of people, because they want what they had. I wish I had this. I wish I had that. And I know I wanted you to talk about your mindset too, but I just wanted to bring that to people's ears again, because I've done that as well. Like I consider myself to be like a very healthy person, but there was a little point in time when I was maybe like ever so slightly a little bit healthier. I don't know, but in my head I was healthier and better, and quote better. And I was thinking, well, what was I doing then? And there's been so many times that I've had to remind myself, like, you were 21 then. Yeah. You were not 21 now.
Or if you look back at a picture and you're like, man, I thought I was fat in that picture. Yes. I would give anything to look like that again. Like, that's
looking at those pictures are a trigger.
That's the number one sign, though, that like it never had anything to do with how you looked, because at the moment you remember feeling fat or thinking that you were fat, or whatever, and you don't relate to that anymore because you're now in a different place. But that's proof that it was all in your mindset. It never actually had to do with how your physical body looked. Exactly. And that's the thing too. A lot of us are looking back at pictures of when we're 18 or 20 or 21. Like things change. And I think that the most beautiful part of this is like embracing that change and being proud of it and not trying to run away from it. Even like anti-aging. Like I just think it's hilarious. I'm like, why is it bothering you? Just
you don't
like,
want a cream to get rid of your wrinkles?
No, I like my wrinkles. I laugh a lot. I hope that like, you know what I mean? Like, like embrace it. It's a privilege to get old.
It is.
Why are we trying to like reverse time? We don't need to do that. Just like enjoy yourself and be proud of yourself and like love where you're at in each of the phases.
There is a quote that Anne Hathaway said on some TV show. I don't know which one it was, but it like this reel keeps reliving on my Facebook, and I'm fine with that. And she said, living is aging, or aging is living.
Yeah.
And to be able to age is to live.
Yeah.
You know, and we take that for granted. Like I feel like we see those filters on Snapchat and stuff where it's like changes you to look like that. And people are like, oh my God. Well, if I, like you said, if I get the cream, if I get the this, if I get the that, like, yes, those things are nice. And like, yes, they may get rid of like I have an under eye cream for my bags. Now I know that's a different thing, but like, yes, it's nice. Cause when I use it, it does work. And but the bags come back the next day and it's like, okay, I'm still tired, and if it's like, and I'm not even a mom yet. Like I don't even want to know what my bags will look like then. But what an honor it is to have lived a life where I could have those bags because I was up all night having the best time ever, or I, worked my ass off to earn a master's, or you earn those things.
Yeah, no, totally.
So go back to your mindset now of you get accepted to go on 80-day obsession. You start your health and fitness journey. Now you're deep
I
in
reinvigorate my health and fitness journey. Yes. For kids. Yeah.
We're in the middle of it. Where are you now?
Wait, what did you just say?
Like now. So you started and you're like fully committed.
Yeah.
Like,
I'm in it.
what's your mindset now that you're in it? How did it change?
Okay, so my mindset right now, today, February 2024 versus even during the Today Show, after the Today Show, and probably 2 years later. So I went in right after and during. There was a lot of, I started doing personal development. I started using a gratitude journal. I was moving my body every day. I was following a diet plan. I was drinking my shakes every day. I was literally doing all the things, and I felt great. Like I did. I felt very good and accomplished, and I lost a lot of weight, and my business was thriving through it. I was a Beachbody coach after that because I was like, when it completely transformed my life from like 1 minute to the next. And so there was a lot, like it was constant aha moments. It was, I was listening to podcasts and reading personal development books for the first time. And so there was constant realizations, and, I was learning all this stuff, and it was a very, I feel like I was in school again, almost like learning a whole new world of like how our brains work. And I was like addicted to figuring things out in that realm, and simultaneously helping other people also. As I was learning, I was helping other people too. And, it was drastically different, especially from, 1 year to the next. And what's funny is the reason I say that, like today, it's different from even when I was in that, what I just described was, COVID happened, life stopped, everybody was home, a lot, it was a lot. And something that I learned during that time was, I had depression, I have anxiety that I've never gone to therapy for. I've never taken medication for.
Were you still getting triggered by comments that people would make, or by things that triggered you even before you had started, or had some of those gotten better?
I mean, usually people were, no, not really.
Okay.
Not really. Usually people were more, I know they might have been talking shit behind my back and not me not knowing
And
it,
who
whatever.
cares?
But like, as far as like what people said to me specifically was less. And I do feel like in the last 3 years, I'm in a place where I can identify all of this. So like if a troll were to comment on something, I wouldn't snap back. At least not like, and I'm not saying it wouldn't trigger me and I wouldn't be like, oh my God, why would they say it?
Right.
You know, like someone I do remember someone messaged me, cause you know, COVID happened, and no, I don't even want to say anything like that. My weight has fluctuated significantly since all of this started. And there doesn't need to be any reasons for that. We all just need to like,
it happens.
We all just need to be aware that bodies change and that's normal. And it's not like a bad word.
Another
gain weight.
drop.
But anyway, so I did get a comment one time that was like, hey, and it was like not someone I follow or that who follows me. And it was an account that had like no posts, no follower, you know, like they maybe just made it up just to like DM me this thing. And it wasn't even a comment, it was a DM. And it was like, hey, I recognize you from the Today Show. Like, has Beachbody helped you lose weight? Or like you look the same to me or something like that, where I was just like, okay, this is weird. But and you know, it didn't it was one of those things that like, you know, I don't know, on my social, I'm not scared to talk about anything. Like I will talk about anything.
Right.
And not even kind of think twice about it. And so
we're very open books.
I wasn't
it's because we're Greek.
Yeah, I was more like, I need to talk about this because if anybody else is, if you know, like I can see how someone would make a comment like this or say something and it would like elicit a like terrible reaction, you know, whether it's like depression, hiding, like being like, oh my God, I can't show up on social media anymore. I need to quit my job. I can't be a coach anymore, whatever. Like people very quickly spiral in certain situations. So I did address it, but it was more like, you know, it was at the same time I was going through my intuitive eating certification too. And so I think that doing that has just made me very in tune with and aware of where other people's comments are coming from and how deeply rooted in like diet culture everything is. And when people say something like it works, that shows me right there. They're like, does that work? Does it work? Like, did it work? Did Beachbody work? Did it do its job? Yeah. Did keto work for you? I'm trying to figure out what's going to work for me. And then like the reality is that's not what we're doing. That like, what does it works mean? You know what I mean? Like, so, and because most people are like, well, if it works, you're losing, it means you are able to lose weight. And then it's kind of like, let's talk about that a little bit, because do you like, obviously you think that that's the problem that you have, but if you woke up tomorrow and you were 50 pounds lighter, what of the problems that you have today would be gone?
And that goes back to the whole concept of the pictures. When you look back at the pictures where you still felt the exact same way and you're like, oh my God, the weight was never the problem.
Right. Exactly.
That makes me like definitely want to think twice about the way I talk about things too, because like I've definitely said like, oh, it'll work when. And I don't even think of it like that. I just think of it as like, you know, as a personal trainer, when I was working at the gym, I had clients coming to me and they're like, what workouts can I do here that'll help me lose weight? And I always would tell them, you know, like, yes, like these are the best for your biceps. This is the best to do this. This is the best to do that. But it'll work when you also work on your nutrition or when you also are doing these things. And what I wanted to convey to them was that it's not just about the gym and it's not just about losing weight. It's about the whole package, changing your lifestyle, changing your mindset. But it's funny because I've definitely used those words.
Yeah.
Like it'll work when, and it was never like, of course, intended to be like I'm going to sell you something, but it totally comes across that way, because why else would they ask you if it worked if that's not what they wanted.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, there's so much, oh my gosh, intuitive eating. Like,
you're gonna have to come back for that. That's the second episode.
No, that's gonna be a lot. But it very much like just that, like that, I feel like that's the most basic first step, is like recognizing that all of those beliefs are rooted in diet culture and what you think is the problem.
Yes.
Because it works is like, you think the problem is how your body looks, and you think that magically if you lose X amount of weight or if you look a certain way
that you'll feel better.
Yes. And there is a very like actual thin privilege reality. So there, like, it's not that there isn't a little bit of, I don't even want to say truth to that, because that's not what I mean, but there is, thin privilege does exist in our culture, in our society. It just does. It's the ideal scenario that everybody strives for, which is why diet culture and wellness culture and anti-aging and all that stuff is probably one of the most profitable industries in out of everything.
I never thought of it that way.
Yeah.
Whoa. Okay, no, keep going. And I have something I'll add.
Yeah. When you are looking for an answer to what works, like, in my opinion, the thing that needs work is your emotional, like, ability to even understand your emotions and your ability to help yourself through those emotions and your ability to recognize what's true and what's not true. Like emotional eating is a big one that emotional eating is normal. Like, it's a normal way to cope with a feeling. There are other ways to cope with feelings, but it's not something that anyone should be shamed for doing or try to stop. And the whole premise of intuitive eating is like, it's all science-based, and it's basically about human behavior and how, you know, when things are restricted, then you literally want them more. Like, yes. That is scientifical. I'm such a good dietitian.
Sorry, I'm a great personal trainer because I was nodding my head to the teacher.
It's straight scientific evidence. Like, there's literally hundreds of studies that have been done on intuitive eating and how different it is from being on a diet versus, you know, have literally just like finding and having acceptance of yourself in all ways.
You know what just happened?
What?
As you said that, I almost was like, you know what pisses me off? Because this is now what I'm realizing, another onion layer with like health and fitness triggering, is I hate it when people say things like, I'm not going to have the pizza, and I'm not going to have the cake, and I'm not going to have this, because the deep-rooted thing is that I wish we lived in a society that was more accepting of just eating the foods you love. Because when you said emotional eating, it made me think of like, well, yeah, when you eat a cake, it makes you happy because it's your birthday and you're excited. Or like Greek Easter, we get all the amazing food and we're emotionally eating that. We're happy too. And people forget that there is a little bit of like sad emotional eating. Like, yeah, I did just go through a breakup and I want the ice cream. Yeah. Like, forget it. I want some ice cream. But then the problem comes from when it gets to be overwhelming and maybe people then binge and then it starts something else.
Well, binging is another thing that happens from dieting, but it's more so that there's not only one way to deal with emotions.
Yes.
And being able to learn and have several different tools in your toolbox of dealing with emotions is the healthy way to handle your emotions. You know what I mean? Like, it's not like it's okay if you eat emotionally and that's the only way you know how to cope with any of your feelings. Like, no, we need to grow up and we need to learn how to, like, to be quite honest, none of us know how to handle our feelings because none of us were raised with parents who really, I mean, I say none of us. I'm sure there are some people that are different, but for the most part, parents 20, 30, 40 years ago were not aware of, you know, any emotions other than like happy, sad,
angry,
crying, mad. like the basics, when there's like hundreds of emotions that you can actually be feeling, like, and so it's digging into like what, like if you're feeling sad, quote unquote, like, are you actually sad, or are you like, you know what I mean? Like what part of sadness? And that's where maybe this is something you can share, but there's like emotion wheels where it breaks up, like sad is the big emotion, but then there's like 10 underneath that's like helps you dig into like what actual emotion are you feeling within the sad umbrella.
You know what that reminds me of? At school, we teach the kids how to identify emotions with colors, just because sometimes they can't tell you, like, I feel sad, I feel upset, I feel shy, or I feel whatever. So we have like charts around the school, like anchor charts, bulletin boards that have like red, yellow, green, and blue, because it's easier, and research has shown it's easier for them to associate with a color.
Yeah.
So red is angry, green is happy, whatever. But we also have like a list of like a bunch of different faces that could mimic how they feel. And they do so well with that because they're just like, I feel blue.
Yeah.
And then you can interpret blue however that means to you. And you don't have to know is that, that because they're exhausted or sad or this, but they feel this kind of a way. And I feel like if our generation grew up with something like that, it would help so much.
We stopped at the angry, sad, mad, happy, crying. Those are like, like those are the only ones that anyone was aware of. So the fact that there's like dozens more, we all need to learn about them. And instead of shaming ourselves for not knowing how to deal with our emotions, we need to understand, like, we were not taught, we were not, we didn't have anyone to mimic. And so we developed whatever we developed, and that's fine. But now we're grown ass adults, right? Like we have and a lot of times with parenthood, this comes out when you have kids, because your kids are your biggest triggers. They're just like showing you all your shit that you did, like that you do or that you couldn't do, that you were reprimanded for when you were little and whatever. So there's like, it's constant triggering, but it's also very helpful because you can see, like things might come out that you didn't realize were something that you weren't allowed to do when you were little. Or it's things like that. There's like, so it's very like, there's so many levels of that, and it really is, that is an onion. But it's like, that's the number one thing. Once you start having kids and you see that, this was all happening simultaneously. Like the Today Show happened. I had a 6-month-old, a 2-year-old, and a 4.5-year-old. So like I was in the depths of like 3 kids under 5. Like there was no stopping anything. Everything was like a roller coaster. And so once things started to settle a little bit, and I, and they got a little bit older, like all these things were happening. And it's like, I constantly had the roadmap of like, okay, well, let's deal with this trigger now, because like, there's another one. We got to go this way and figure that out. And so like,
pick and choose.
Yeah. But I think the main, I started talking about all this because we're trying to focus on like what's going to work for me to lose weight, when the reality is you have unmet emotional needs and you don't know how to fulfill those emotional needs. And until you do figure that out, it's not even worth redirecting your focus to something outside, like diet and exercise, or getting on a diet plan and like putting all your eggs in that basket and hoping that that's the miracle thing that'll happen. But it's literally just like learning more about yourself and what you're actually feeling, because we just don't know how to do that. We've never known how. And so that's a huge part of the journey of this. And
it's going to bring out a lot more triggers. And I think a lot of people, and I can speak like on behalf of my clients, they don't know where to start with that. You're right.
Yeah.
Like they think that to lose weight is the answer, or to whatever, like insert the blank.
It seems so glorious and wonderful. Everybody that you see who's lost all this weight, they're like, oh, it's amazing. And I did say that. But when I look back, not that I didn't need to go through the Today Show and like I did, that helped me greatly in that time in my life. But looking back, hindsight 2020, again, I'm going to say that, like, I needed antidepressants. Like I needed anxiety and depression
medication.
Fine. Like, yes, it was good. It's good to move your body, and it's good to like have gentle nutrition part, like, but there's the last thing I want to say that I forgot, because you said something about Greek Easter. So much of eating, like emotional eating is one thing that I feel like is stigmatized again. Like people try to hide it because they're scared that people will judge them for it and they feel ashamed of it. But so much about, like, there's a huge part of eating that's like cultural and like very focused on like how, like, being social. And like sitting around a table with people that you love and like talking and enjoying your food and taking your time and not feeling rushed. Like there's so many things that I feel like, unfortunately, in this country, that is not the focus. So like people will say things like, oh, the Mediterranean diet, you should get on the Mediterranean diet. But to be honest with you, a huge part of the Mediterranean diet, and when I say Mediterranean diet, I just mean what people in the Mediterranean consume as food to live, not any kind of diet telling you what to eat and how much of it. But
I'm not putting you on a diet here.
But they miss a huge part of the Mediterranean diet because it's about sitting around a table and talking for 3 hours while you look at the ocean after you take your afternoon nap and like have the life of your dreams. You know what I mean? Like literally, it's a completely different lifestyle.
Like
and so we're trying to like extract the Mediterranean diet and bring it over here, but we're leaving behind so many of the important parts that we're missing over here. Like it should be enjoyable. It shouldn't be a stressful situation where you're like, if I eat this, if I eat too much of it, if I'm gonna, like you shouldn't be stressing about what it is or how much you have or whatever. It's more like, what can we enjoy about meal times? What can we talk about with our kids at the table? Like what, like, I mean, all of that stuff is, like diet culture makes us just completely be blindsided to that. Like we don't even see that because we're so focused on what works, what's going to work to make me lose weight, what's going to work to do that.
And that is honestly like what brings it right back to the beginning, which was my initial thing that I talked about, that when I posted something health and fitness related, or when I post things that are health and fitness related, which is a lot, it triggers those people because you're right. All of those things that we said are their onions that they haven't unpeeled yet.
Yeah.
And they are even things that I haven't unpeeled. Like the minute that you said that, what did you say? I don't remember now.
Emotional eating?
Oh, the emotional eating. Yeah, with the food. Yeah, like the minute you said the thing about the emotional eating too, it was like, oh my God, I had another thing that pissed me off. And I just think like the best conclusion to all of this is just that you are going to have people that don't like things that you do. There's going to be trolls. There's going to be people that say things, piss you off, whatever. And you have to go back to, what are your values? What do you want in life? And sometimes, like Irene said, it's not just that you want to lose weight. It's that you want to be accepted, or it's that you want to be loved, or it's that you want to be independent, or you want to be whatever this is. And it's going to take some work for you to realize whether it's the trolls coming at you or even your friends or your family or something that you've noticed as well that just pisses you off. There's some work that needs to be done. And I liked your perspective of the article better than mine. I read it as just like, I was just reading it more from like a matter of fact standpoint.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh yeah, like we all have triggers. Cool. Like what triggers are this, that.
Yeah,
but
I don't know that I would have perceived it that way without the intuitive eating training. Like I feel like my entire perspective of all of this has completely changed because there's a lot wrapped into it. But
I want us to do that.
Yeah.
Like I do want people to not be afraid.
Yeah.
And because obviously, like what do we tell our kids? When something bothers you, you have to say something.
Right.
You have to do something about it.
Don't hold it in. And
yes.
Don't avoid it.
Don't let this kid bully you. Don't let this kid do that. Don't let the teacher tell you this. Don't let this happen. Well, then what are you going to do about it? Like I literally need that on a shirt for this podcast. I've said it for every episode. There needs to be a shirt that says, what are you going to do about it? So that's going to be something I do in 2024. The perfect. Irene's going to make it. So, but I'm serious. It's really time that we stop running away from our triggers. Find out why things that other people do trigger us. Find out why we get triggered by things that other people do. and unpack and unpeel that onion.
And learn about your emotions.
Learn about your emotions. Stop living in all of this fake world that honestly just lives in our head.
Yeah.
Like a lot of the things that I feel like are quote, quote, acceptable are just because somebody made that up.
Yeah.
And that is something that always pisses me off, which is also what got me started with working out, because the reason I had not gone to the gym yet at that point in my life, even though I had all this anxiety, was because I didn't think I belonged. I thought I was going to walk into this gym with a bunch of men. Yeah. And I was like, ooh, I am a 16-year-old girl. I don't want to walk into this. Like, I don't know. Something's going to happen to me. And it's like, no, Julie, you're just going to learn how to be strong. You're going to unpeel your layers and you're going to learn more about yourself.
Help your mental health.
You're going to help your mental health. And then you're actually going to meet a very healthy version of you.
Yeah.
And I think that's like the best piece of advice I can give you guys is to just don't
march to the beat of your own drum.
Yeah, march to the beat of your own drum. Do what makes you happy, but if something does piss you off, maybe don't get angry like I just did. but you know, this is advice for me as well. Instead of just being like that bitch, like just you can think that, but also do something about it. Whether it's talk therapy, whether it's, you know, actually with a therapist, or even just, you know, call your cousin, call your friend, call somebody and just be like, this happened to me, and let it out. I think it's time we stop living in a world where we hold everything in and try to meet unrealistic standards.
Absolutely.
Do you have anything else you want to add?
Don't get me started. I need to stop talking.
Well, obviously, we're going to have Irene come back more. We'll talk even more about all the emotional eating, all the boundaries, all the things, because obviously, I'm saying obviously way too many times too. I'm going to have to edit this before I go to bed.
No, it's better.
It is. You know, you're right. I'm going to leave it in. But it's true. We have so many more things we need to talk about with Irene, but we are at our time limit. So I just want to say, number one, thank you to Irene for coming on here and doing this with me. I had so much fun.
Me too.
And I'm so excited to hear what you guys think about all this. What feedback do you have? What things do you want us to unpack next time? What are some things you want to be in future episodes? And of course, I hope you guys know that I care about you. I want you to feel the best you can, which is why I provide this podcast to you. I want to be able to give you any tips, tricks, tools that I can to help you live a better life. And I want you to know that I believe in you, and I hope you have a great day.